that the sun shines down its power to all the world and makes the wind blow strong as it will. I wonder how gentle rains can fall upon the land, so lovely earth can stay lovely still. Hello, ladies and gentlemen. This is Energy Week with George Harvey and Tom Fennell, and this week we have an audience.
Hello.
Hello. The audience is allowed to applaud if he wants. Thank you. Okay. Every day I get up at some early hour, sometimes around 3 o'clock, sometimes later. Today it happened to be about
like
4.
3:30.
3:30. Actually, today it was about 4 o'clock. And I go through the news for the day relating to energy and climate change. And I put the things that I find that I think are the most interesting at a blog, geoharvey.wordpress.com. That's GEOHARVEY, and everything is organized by date. And I have about 10 or 15 things every day. I go through about 400 news items every day.
I can believe
300,
that. Yeah.
400.
You
I used to say 250, but there were a lot that I didn't count. And I've got a lot of stuff up there. If you want to go there and search for things, you can do it. Anyway.
Yeah, I've mentioned this before. There's a lot of good stuff here that we don't have time to talk about.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
So,
and
if anything,
today there's going to be,
yeah. So
sure.
if anything attracts you, go to geoharvey.com.
.wordpress.com.
Yep. Sorry about that.
That's okay.
Pull up the particular article, click on the link, and it will take you to the main article.
That's right.
And there's a lot of meat back out
there's
there.
There's a lot of meat.
2, 3, 4 pages.
Yeah,
sometimes.
some of the articles are like almost entirely on the, the synopsis on the blog is almost the whole lot.
Some of them are short.
Some of them are really short.
Some of them have a lot of meat, so.
Yeah, anyway, we pick the 20 or so items that we think are the most interesting and put them up on this show every week on Thursdays. So we start with the previous Thursday, which on this case is October 22nd. And I guess we should just launch into it.
As I drop my coffee and click my clicker.
There you go. This first item is really kind of amazing. One of the world's leading experts on permafrost told BBC News, and this comes from BBC, the recent rate of warming of permafrost is, in his words, unbelievable. About 1/10 of a degree Celsius per year in northern Alaska since the mid-2000s. He says the current permafrost evidence has convinced him that global warming is real and not just a product of natural variation. Tom, why don't you scroll that a little bit so people can see the picture?
That's all of the picture.
Oh, that's the whole picture?
That's the whole picture.
That's the whole picture. Wow. Okay. I thought it was just the top half of the picture.
No, that's a picture of a forest in the permafrost zone where all the trees are falling over because they have no support.
Yeah. What happens is these trees are growing on a rather thin soil that thaws out every year. That rests on bedrock. Well, in this case, bedrock is permafrost, which is called permafrost because it's ice that is permanently solid. But the ice, permafrost, is no longer their bedrock. It's turned to mud. And so these guys just die they fall over and then they die. This is what's called a drunken forest. We will see a ghost forest later on.
Yeah. Well, last week we saw some of the housing up in the Northwest Territory. I think it was Yellowknife.
Yeah.
There was more housing in this picture, but they weren't as spectacular as last week. This was a dozen houses that were sitting sideways.
Yeah.
They just collapsed.
They collapsed. And we've got people in the United States, politicians,
throwing snowballs in Congress.
Donald Trump is saying this isn't happening. It's not real. Or he's saying this is just weather. It's just weather.
Just weather?
Yeah. Actually, I got a list today of the actual positions of all the Republican Democrats too. Yeah. And I'd been accusing the Republicans, in fairness I should say, I'd been accusing them of being deniers. Most of them are not deniers. They say climate change is happening, but
we don't have to worry about it.
We don't have to worry about it is basically what they're saying, which I think is nonsense. But anyway, That's from BBC. Our next item, should we go on?
Yeah, we might as well. Can't
Okay.
dance.
Mobile World Live. How did you know I couldn't dance? Sent us this piece. Apple announced plans to build solar energy projects with a capacity of 200 megawatts.
That's a lot.
That's a lot. Northern,
big
eastern,
lot.
and southern regions of China, where iPhone supplier Han Hai Precision, also known as Foxconn, said it will add solar power plants with a capacity of 400 megawatts, supplying Jingzhou factory in Henan province by 2018, and I do not ever pronounce Chinese right.
I don't think the Chinese even pronounce it right.
Well, you know, they've got about 500 languages there, so, you know, probably 2 people out of 1,000 pronounce it right.
I'll tell you a funny story about Chinese. I had
Yeah.
a professor in college.
Yeah?
And he spelled his name NG.
Mm.
Well, he pronounced it Wu. And later on, I was working with a Chinese guy. I mean, a Chinese-American guy. you
Yeah.
know, and I asked him about this, and he laughed. He laughed. He says, any Chinese would understand what was going on. He says, there's 2 major dialects
Yeah.
that use the same ideogram.
Yeah.
And in one part of China, that's pronounced Eng. And the other and his name was Eng. And the other part of China, that's pronounced Wu.
What can you
Ping
say?
Eng was his name.
What can you say? Well, you
Yeah.
know, I think it was George Bernard Shaw who pointed out that GHOTI
Is
is fish. And I'm not going to explain that because we don't have time. But nevertheless, it's true. Should we continue?
Yeah, we might as well move along.
CNews Renewables had a piece that says it was announced that a strategic investment agreement has been signed for the planned Hinkley Point C nuclear power plant in the UK. The Renewable Energy Association said it's struggling to see the larger join-up vision of a national energy strategy. The strike price for nuclear power is double that of solar.
Yep. I'll be betting that this never opens. I'm really going to be betting that it never opens.
I'm betting it's not going to open.
If it does open, there's corruption behind that curtain.
Well,
somewhere.
you know, I was looking at the news today, and we're going to go through this next week.
Uh-huh.
But David Cameron, the Prime Minister of the UK,
Yeah. For the time being,
announced that he wants to put several $billion into a submarine cable running from Iceland to the UK.
I think we've talked about that.
We have, but the people in Iceland had suggested it. Now David Cameron says he wants to do it. And I saw that and I thought, yeah, every single thing these people back involves huge investments and, more to the point, centralized power.
Good point. Yeah.
They don't want solar panels on people's roofs.
Well, it's inevitable.
Yeah. They don't want wind turbines in the countryside. They want them out at sea where you have to spend billions of dollars putting them in.
There's something you're not supposed to do into the wind, and it's not spit.
Well, you're not supposed to spit into the wind, but nevertheless, and you're not supposed to tread on Superman's cape or...
No, nothing like that.
Okay.
Well, I got this one. This was a paywall, but I managed to go around it. And I got some
You're
of the
talking
text.
about the next one, Blue and Green Tomorrow?
No, we're talking about the Hinkley.
Hinckley, okay.
Yeah, that was hiding behind a paywall.
Well,
so.
CNews Renewables is usually pretty easy to access.
Well, I couldn't get in there.
Really?
Yeah.
How strange.
Well, I could have, but they wanted me to join.
Oh, they wanted you to register.
Well, I think
should have thought of that.
join. I think they want like $10 a month. I could be
I
confusing
don't
it
know.
with the other one.
I'm doing this, and they say
But in any case, I managed to find it from, going around the
other
back door.
places. Okay.
So let's move on.
Let's move on. Blue and Green Tomorrow says globally, coal mining companies are on the edge of the financial abyss. More planned coal plants are being canceled than built, as renewable energy is attracting more investment than coal. A WWF report says in 2014, 59% of net additions to global power capacity were from renewable energy, nearly 80% in Europe. And we're running about 60% in the United States. And interestingly enough, they will tell you 40% of the new capacity being brought into the United States is natural gas.
40%?
40%.
And that's a bubble.
Well, just think about this for a minute. If you take that figure in isolation, it sounds like natural gas capacity is building. Mm-hmm. What you aren't considering is the fact that it is barely more than the amount of natural gas plants that are being retired. Mm-hmm. So the actual natural gas capacity is not increasing substantially.
I think basically that's what I mean when I call it a bubble.
Yeah, it's not going anywhere.
Quick takeaway from this one. Burning coal is the largest single contributor to climate change, and we must phase it out if we want to achieve any of the goals currently under discussion at Bonn at the UN climate negotiations.
What's that picture up there, Tom? You haven't got it on the screen.
It's a coal tipple. It's
a coal tip?
Well, I don't know if it's a tipple, but it's
tipple.
It's a big pile of coal and a machinery behind it to move it somewhere.
Okay.
It's up there now.
I knew a woman named Tipple once. She was the nanny.
This picture came with the article, so I figured I'd go with it.
Yeah, absolutely. I do that quite a lot. Okay, our next item comes from Friday, October 23rd.
Oh, this is a good one.
It came from Clean Technica. By population, Ontario, province, Canada.
There's a picture of it up there.
North of the Great Lakes.
Yeah.
Ontario would be the 5th largest state in the United States if it were in the United States by population. But its installed solar capacity, 1,500 megawatts, would rank it as number 3. This is Ontario. This is north of the Great Lakes. This is up there.
Well, there's only about 200 miles of Ontario that's habitable.
Yeah. So
up above that, it's tundra.
Well, that's habitable. It's just not habitable by you and me.
Yeah, right.
The province has also shut down all of its coal-fired power plants. How does a northern province become solar and climate leader despite one of the poorest solar resources in North America?
Smart policy.
By golly. Okay. So, have you got more to say about this?
There's a quick takeaway here. This is a good one.
Okay.
The policy was noteworthy for also requiring the purchased solar arrays to be made in Ontario.
That means that the solar panels have to be made in Ontario?
Well, the arrays.
The arrays, okay.
They're probably not making panels but they might be.
They could be. I mean,
it's like San Antonio,
Yeah, it all has to come from San Antonio. Yep.
The Ontario lesson is that solar development takes good policy, and the more democratic the policy, the wider the benefits.
Which is why, and it's why those organizations like those big far-right patriotic organizations don't want it. They don't want anything.
They don't want anything to do with democracy.
Democracy? Are you kidding me?
Sounds too much like the Democratic Party, which isn't democracy either.
Well, also it sounds like socialism,
Oh my God.
Okay. All right. So we're on to mysanantonio.com.
Oh, we're back in San Antonio.
Back in San Antonio at 12:30 a.m. Thursday, the main Texas operator reported that nearly 37% of demand was met with wind power. The Electricity Reliability Council of Texas, which manages nearly 90% of the state's electric needs, said it used 12,237.6 megawatts. I'm glad they're counting even the decimal figures of wind power at the time. They bested the previous record, which was 11,467. That's a big jump in a record.
Oh yeah.
But of course they've been installing this stuff like mad down there. So
it's kind of strange because you think of Texas as being a very conservative state, yet they're jumping into renewables as fast as it's possible.
Well, it's because they believe in democracy.
Huh?
They believe in democracy.
I guess they do.
Yeah. Which is why, most of the Republican candidates are eventually going to run into trouble down there.
Now, what this thing says, just to get it into perspective, a megawatt powers about 500 typical Texas residences during periods of normal demand.
Yeah.
That's about 2 megawatts a house, or 2 kilowatts a house.
2 kilowatts a house, which is probably about right. But you've got to be careful with figures like that, because are we talking about a megawatt of constant power? Are we talking about, solar power, you're talking about a low capacity factor.
Yeah.
It's going 25% of the time.
This is an average.
30% of the time.
This is an average.
I know.
2 kilowatts is hooked up to a house is going to keep it going most of the time.
Right.
But
and if you have a nuclear power plant, it keeps everybody going all the time, except when it goes down, in which case it keeps nobody going at all for a whole month. So, you know. Okay?
Yep.
Okay, Voice of America.
Moving right along.
The EPA officially issued the Clean Power Plan. We've been talking about it for months, and finally they put it out. Regulations on power plants to cut carbon emissions.
I've got a different one coming.
You've got a different one, of course. You've got National Observer.
Oh, I do, yeah.
Typical industry scenarios see coal,
we go.
oil, gas growing by 30% to 50% and still making up 75% of the global energy supply mix in 2040. But none take into account the potential for reducing fossil fuel demand as ever more countries seek to decarbonize their economies, according to the Clean Tracker Initiative report. This is from National Observer. And this is important. You have to understand this if you're going to understand the future of energy. We have organizations, and these organizations are similar to other organizations elsewhere in the world that have been told by the government to tell them where we're going. And in the United States, it's the Energy Information Administration, and they are told, tell us what is going to happen, but do it this way. Don't put anything into your mix of things you're going to project that is in the slightest speculative.
An interesting takeaway here. Cost reductions of energy battery storage being 7 years ahead of the forecast they made last year.
Yes, I know. And you find the EIA every year has reported, every year but one, this is what we think solar power is going to be like in 25 years. And then solar power is like that in 1 year. The 1 year that they didn't do that, they said, this is what solar power is going to be like in 25 years. And the guys across the hall at the EPA said, well, wait a minute, we reported that figure last week as what it already was. They have been told, this is how you do your calculations. And they're not allowed to put into the calculations anything that they can't actually say, this is what's going to happen. So, for example, if you have a incentive to put in solar power, that incentive will end in 18 months or whatever. So their calculations say that's going to end in 18 months. Mm-hmm. Nothing is assumed after that, so they assume
it's going to stop.
It's going to stop, which is...
I'd bet against it.
Yeah, right. It's like, why are you going to assume it's going to stop? Is that any safer than assuming that it's going to continue? Well, it takes an act of Congress to make it continue. Okay.
Well, that's what Congress does, isn't it?
Yes, it is. And at the same time, there are incentives for other forms of energy which don't stop. They don't terminate. And so they assume that in 2039, we're still going to be subsidizing coal.
Even though nobody's using it.
Even though nobody's using it. So the result of that is that they've got a system there which says, oh yeah, we're going to be 75% renewable, fossil fuels in 2040.
I got a solution. We got to pay the utilities to not use coal.
I would actually support that idea. Yeah.
Well, I would too, but I don't think we need to.
Yeah, I don't think we do. I mean, people are dying because other people are using coal. Yeah. And you know, from my point of view, that's kind of like, you're not paying these guys to dig mines. You're not paying them at all. You're actually charging them for the electricity you produce, or the utility is charging for the electricity the coal you produce uses.
Well, the socket doesn't care where it comes from.
That's right. And so people are dying, but they have to pay them. It's wrong. It's just wrong. And on top of everything else, you've got organizations like ExxonMobil denying Exxon.
They've been lying for years.
Lying for years. People have been dying. They've been lying. The lies were made to support their income. I think when you tell a lie with the idea that you're going to get money, that's called fraud. They've been doing it for years and years and years. That's a violation of the RICO Act. It's called a racket. It is called racketeering. Okay,
Well,
let's
we'll
get
be
off
hearing
that.
more about that, I think.
I
If not
think
on
we
this
probably
show,
will, yeah.
I think we're going to hear about it elsewhere.
We will indeed.
Moving right along, let's get a little closer to home
Now
here.
we're getting back to the voice of America. The EPA officially issued the Clean Power Plan, regulations on power plants to cut carbon emissions, part of the Obama administration's plan to cut carbon emissions by more than 30% by 2030. The plan requires each state to create an effective plan. Boy, the word plan just keeps showing up in this. To meet emissions cuts at power plants, but 24 states will fight the new rules in court. And one thing I want to remind everybody of was this was not something that Barack Obama simply thought up while he was trying to get to sleep one night. This is something that
This has been going on for a long time.
the EPA was instructed to regulate carbon emissions by the Supreme Court and the District Court of Washington, D.C.
Okay.
You're going to, in order
have to do it.
They have to do it. They don't have a choice. They actually said they didn't want to do it. And then the state of Massachusetts sued them, along with a bunch of other people. And so they had to do this. And the idea that these 24 states will fight the new rules in court, from my perspective, I'm going to guess that that is a political move that is entirely intended to mollify people during the next presidential campaigns.
I wouldn't bet against that. It seems to be very partisan.
It is very partisan.
We'll be talking about that several times in this.
Yeah.
I wanted to point this picture out. It happens to come from New Hampshire. Oh yeah, I got a picture up.
There you go.
It's in that's the Merrimack Station in Bow.
Yes.
Bow, New Hampshire.
Yes.
And it's really not a lot of pollution. It looks like a lot, but it's mostly steam.
Yep.
But that doesn't mean those other little stacks that you see there that don't look like they're putting anything out are.
Well, you know one thing about this though, Tom, look at that steam for a second.
Yeah, the bottom part of it.
No, the white, the stuff that's closest to the smokestack is white.
Yeah.
The stuff that's farther away has
darker.
It's darker and
So
has a
so they're
kind of a-
hiding stuff in there.
Yeah, and it's not like they're actually hiding it. What's happening is that the steam is evaporating as it comes out, which is leaving behind particulate matter, which is in there.
That's an accurate explanation,
Yeah.
really.
So
That's
you get the
what's really
color of
going
the
on.
particulate matter. So, all right, move along. Do I have your permission?
Well, I was wondering, was there something that we had to talk about?
Oh.
But it'll come up again because we're going to revisit this 24 states thing.
Oh, yes.
Okay, so
We're
yeah,
going to
move along.
revisit it right away. The California Statesman says
Oh, the very next one.
Friday's
Here we go.
Yep, Friday's 24 state lawsuit seeking to block the EPA's Clean Power Plan shows a rift between Colorado Governor and Attorney General Governor Hickenlooper.
On the left.
I have wondered every time I hit that name. I wonder how does it feel to grow up with the name Hickenlooper.
I would be much rather be called Hickenloop.
Well, it's better than being called Sue. If you're a guy, you should be called Sue if your name is Sue. But anyway, I don't know
how do you Hickenloop anyhow?
How do you Hickenloop? I don't know. Maybe you loop Hickens. I don't know what that means either. Governor Hickenlooper supports the EPA plan, but Attorney General Cynthia Kaufman will fight it. Some people accuse her of being unduly influenced by the fossil fuel industry.
No, that would never happen.
Oh, no, never happened.
No.
And then our next one is...
The next one is even closer to home.
Closer to home, the Barry Montpelier Times-Argus says Vermont Governor Peter Shumlin has been a forceful proponent of renewable energy during his 3 terms in office. But a recent proposal by Ranger Solar LLC to construct 20-megawatt solar arrays in 6 Vermont communities, and should I name them? Ludlow, Brandon, Highgate, Randolph Center, Irisburg, Sheldon. He says it's going too far.
Well, he may have a point. I mean, a 20-megawatt solar project is going to take 100 acres.
Yeah,
That's about a half a mile on a side.
yeah.
That's big.
Yeah.
Now, if nobody sees them and they're in the Hidden Valley, who cares?
Birds fly into them.
Solar panels.
Yeah, they do.
Well, they do, I'm
They
sure.
think they're water to land on.
Yeah,
No, I'm serious.
yeah.
There are people who say that. I don't believe
Yeah.
it.
Well, I'm sure the
but-
birds are flying around,
I mean,
but they
I've-
see
I
this
ha-
thing and
yeah, I
they
have
land
seen-
on it and they say, this isn't water.
You can't fool a bird. I have seen a bird. Actually, I didn't see it. I heard it, and then I saw what came of it after that. Fly into the roof of a house. My house.
Yeah, well, how many birds do they find in the ground underneath the Empire State Building?
I
every
have no
morning?
idea.
It's hundreds.
I have
You
no
know,
idea.
they-
Well, you know,
It's been going on for
there was
70, 80 years.
Yeah, there was an inventory that was done at a U.S. power plant. They estimated that 5,000 birds died during the inventory period, which was 48 hours. And those
How
birds.
many birds?
5,000.
They must have been small birds.
No, they were migrating birds. They were geese
Oh,
and stuff.
okay.
Well, some of them were small,
Yeah.
but they were just
It was
this and
that
that.
time of year.
It was that time of year, and these birds were flying into cooling towers and smokestacks at Crystal River, which had 6 coal units and 1 nuclear. And you know, the birds were the inventory period was 48 hours. These birds were dying 100 an hour.
Wow.
So, you know, birds have a rough time with any way you make power.
Well-
There's just no way
Well,
you can make
anything big that
if
we
you
make.
want to
I
live
mean,
in a
tall
house,
buildings.
yeah. If you want to live in a house, you're putting birds at risk. I suggest that we stop putting birds at risk, and the way we do that is we start living in caves with lots and lots of clothes on, so we don't have to have fires, and stop having families. And you know,
Yeah.
within a few generations, the birds will be fine.
Talking about living in caves, I saw this thing on YouTube.
Yeah.
A guy in Arizona, who himself is independently wealthy,
Yes.
for a hobby, is creating sandstone caves to live in. And they're beautiful.
I believe
Yeah,
it.
oh my God!
Well, you know,
they're
I've always
beautiful.
wanted to live in a hobbit home. You know, those things with the round doors and all that?
Yeah, yeah.
I always thought they'd be cool.
Very free form these caves are.
Yeah.
There's not a right angle in them, you know. But
Yep.
there's a quick takeaway here. There's a guy running for governor. He's not running against Shumlin because Shumlin's
Shumlin's
not running
not running.
anymore. But his name is Bruce Lisman. And
Okay.
he's proposing a 2-year moratorium on all renewable energy projects.
Yeah, of course he is. And he's probably being supported in some way or other by somebody who.
Well, he's got a hidden agenda. He must have, but the governor is blasting him, even though he's not running against him.
Yeah, well, I
Whose
think.
jobs are you eliminating? What Vermonter are you turning to and saying your job is gone? You're saying 1 in 20 Vermonters, your job gone. I'm a job creator, not a job destroyer. We don't need job destroyers. He's merciless.
Yeah,
He's
well-
hitting them hard.
I don't think he's hitting him hard enough, to tell you the truth. The problem that we've got is one which is absolutely monumental. I mean, the World Wildlife Fund says that we're going to lose 30 to 70% of all species if we don't get climate change under control. And the American Audubon Society, they say that we're going to lose 50% of our bird species if we don't get it under control. And that's the reason why the Audubon Society supported Cape Wind. Basically, was because we'd lose far few birds
If we build it.
If we build Cape
if we
Wind,
don't.
than if we use the power that
Yeah.
Cape Wind would produce coming from something else.
Yeah.
And if we don't get this under control, we've got a real serious problem. And 2 years, okay, during those 2 years that we have that moratorium that he's asking
Yeah.
for, if we did that moratorium worldwide, it would mean that every 10 minutes for those two years, another species would become extinct.
Another species.
Another
You're not
species.
talking about another individual.
We're not talking about a bird flying into a wind turbine
you're
or
talking about
a
thousands of
skyscraper.
birds.
We're talking about species.
Wow.
And you know, this is 144 species a day. You remember the fight over the snail darter and the spotted owl? Well, there you go. Let's have a fight for each one of those and see. You know, we've got a problem, and his approach is let's ignore the problem. Let's continue letting people die at a rate of 10,000 a day.
But money is being made
Yeah, money is being made
by the wrong people.
by people who are dumping their pollution in our backyards
Well,
and
yeah.
shortening our lives.
It's called privatize the profits and socialize
Right.
the risks.
The average person in the European Economic Union, and I think this was the World Health Organization, said that their lives have been shortened by 9 months on average
On average.
by outdoor air pollution.
Well, let's move along to the
Yes,
European
let's get
Union.
away from that.
Let's look at
Okay, Sunday, October 25th in Norway, they use Teslas as taxis.
That's cool.
Cool. Norwegians have the highest rate per capita of ownership of the Prestige plug-in. Taxi driver Trond Gustav Soma has owned his Tesla for 2 years, trading up from a Nissan Leaf. Mums and dads also opting for Teslas instead of the big Volvo. Not only is it cooler, it's cheaper. And you know what, Tom? I'm going to bring up a Brattleboro local political thing here. I
Okay.
don't know that it's political, but I was thinking about this in the last town meeting. You remember at the representative town meeting, they were talking about how they needed a new police car,
Yeah.
and the police car they were replacing was only had like 58,000 miles on it, and it was 3 years old. And somebody said, "Why?" And they said, "Because we have to idle this thing all the time."
Good point.
So they've got to pay 40 some odd thousand dollars, $48,000, whatever it was, because it's basically a muscle car. They have to pay a high price for a new car because the old car is worn out from being idled all the time.
Yeah.
Do you idle Teslas?
I don't think so. No. That's a very, very good point.
And in this next representative town meeting, if I'm there and they say we need a new police car, I'm going to say, "Hey, have you thought about a Tesla for a police car?" That'd be cool.
Looking at it from that standpoint, it makes a lot of sense.
It does. The thing might last 7 or 8 years. You'd save money.
Well, you may have noticed this because I have. Some of the state police cruisers floating around are old.
Yeah.
They're, 90s, late 90s vintage cars.
Well,
And they idle a lot too. What are they doing?
yeah, I don't know. maybe they're switching engines out.
Let's go back to this one real briefly. There.
Okay.
This whole thing started because of that funny looking little car in the lower left corner.
Yep.
It's called a Buddy. It's an electrical car.
Yep.
It's made in Norway.
Yep.
And they put a whole bunch of incentives into electric cars, primarily because of that little car.
Oh, okay.
And of course, it's spread.
Yeah.
But it's an interesting thing that Norway is doing.
Did
and
you-
now the Tesla
Yep.
is picking up on it.
Did you see who killed the electric car?
No, I didn't.
Okay. There were 2 cars that were the focus of that. One of them was the GM electric car, and I've forgotten the name of it. But it was
Chevy Volt, wasn't it?
No. This was
Prior to that.
No,
The
it was
one
before that.
they crushed all of them.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
right. There's only one
You
of them
couldn't
left.
buy one.
Couldn't buy them. And the second car was the Think City.
The what?
Think City, which was
City car.
It was a city car.
Think was the brand, yeah.
Yep.
I vaguely remember hearing about that.
Yes,
Yep.
and they were made by Ford, and they were not really the subject of this thing, but it was exactly the same policy. You couldn't buy them, and after 3 years you had to turn them back in again.
yeah.
But they didn't crush those. What they did was they took them all and shipped them to Norway.
Is that so?
Yeah.
Oh.
And that tells you something about who killed the electric car. And I did a little bit of research and I found out something, which was that the electric car was designed at exactly the time that the Department of Transportation was changing the rules about car safety, and you had to have crumple zones and bags and all that stuff. Those cars didn't have any of that equipment.
Okay.
And they were not sold because there was a deal between GM. Apparently, there was a deal between GM and the Department of Transportation that they would test that vehicle and then get rid of them all.
Okay, yeah. There's a quick takeaway here. It's
Yep.
about just what you talked about. A similar looking 2-seat city car, the Think, began production in Norway in the 2000s.
Right. And
So they're
and
making them over there too.
They made them in the United States, and then Think City was spun off by Ford, became an organization in Norway. There you go. So our next item is from the Rutland Herald. Less than 2 years after Vermont almost quadrupled the amount of renewable power that customers could sell back to their utilities, at least one utility has reached its cap. Vermont largest utility, Green Mountain Power, expects to reach the metering cap of 15% of the peak energy load by early next year. Now they went from a perfect tense to a future tense there. It has reached the cap. It will reach the cap. Nevertheless, they're reaching the cap.
They're there.
And they're there.
They're there or close to it.
And my guess is that Mary Powell is going to say, cap, let's increase it.
I would think.
Yeah.
I would think.
Yep.
It seems like it makes sense.
Yep. Okay, we're up to Monday, October 26th. Business Insider India. Ladies and gentlemen, please. This is going to be the subject of a very short show that Tom and I are going to do, and I think it'll be on Channel 8, and it is about before and after pictures. And there you see a pair of before and after pictures.
The same. This is the same location.
Same location. On the picture on the left was taken in the a little before 1900.
Yeah, the 1890s.
It's the Muir Glacier. And the picture on the right is what it's like today. And where is the Muir Glacier? The Muir Glacier still exists. But
way in the back of that picture.
It's retreated 31 miles.
Yeah.
And so, this is a little evidence of climate change. There are other before and after climate change pictures that are going to be available in that little show that we're going to do on Channel 8. But I want to point something out here. And Tom and I have talked about this. We both had the same take on this. This comes from Business Insider India.
Yeah.
Whoa!
I was reading their website. It's good. They got a lot of good stuff.
They got a lot of good stuff. Yes, I know. We should promote
all in the
them.
English language too.
Yeah. Well, one of the things about that particular site is that their English is relatively good. It's
Indian English.
It's Indian English, but it's readable.
Oh yeah.
A lot of places you read it and you say, "What are these people talking?" And it's like, do they talk about crores and they do in that one? Well, they do in almost every Indian site. But a crore, the
10,000 or something.
Lakh and crore. I think a lakh is 10,000 and a crore is
a million or
no. A crore is 100 million.
100 million.
Is that right?
I don't know. I've looked them up, but I can't remember it.
A lakh is 100,000 and a crore is 10 million. That's what it is. Because they do to 1,000, and then after that they do by hundreds instead of thousands.
Yeah.
And it's like
disconcerting.
You want to go from lakh and crore, a lakh crore rupees to man, what a job.
Lakh is L-A-K-H.
Yep.
Yeah. That always threw me.
Oh, and a lakh crore is 10,000 hundred millions. Whoa. Okay.
Well, to get back to this, we will be showing a slideshow. Of these before and afters.
Yeah.
And it's worth
looking at.
One thing, you can get it by going to Business Insider India, going to Geo Harvey.
That's right.
And clicking on Business Insider India. And it's well worth doing it.
October 26th is the date for that. Okay, we should get going.
We should move along.
Grand Junction Daily Sentinel says that after dropping to a 20-year low last year, Colorado coal production is still falling. State data shows the statewide, the 2015 production through August totaled 13.9 million tons, down from 15.5 million tons for the same period of last year. Production totaled nearly 40 million tons in 2004 and under 23 million tons last year.
There it is in graph form.
Yeah, and this is a picture of an industry that is in desperate trouble. And if you look at the way the Koch brothers are spending money on politics, you can see that they're desperate, right?
I would think, yeah. I would think.
I mean,
I'm sure they got a lot of money invested in renewables.
In coal and in oil and gas. But we talked about this last week, the fact that there are a bunch of coal companies that have lost 99.97% of their value and stuff like that. And
well, we're not in the investment advice business.
Except,
my advice would be sell your coal mining shares.
No, just give them away.
Give them
They're
away.
not worth anything now.
Is it worth the postage to mail them to your new customer?
Right. We were telling everybody we think that it would be a good idea if the big investment places like if you know what, Tom, if the California pension funds had taken our advice 18 months ago, they would have saved
pretty.
They would have saved $2 billion.
I can believe that. Yeah.
You know, and we were advising everybody, don't do that. But of course, as Tom says, we don't know what we're talking about.
Well, we saw we saw Colorado falling behind us. Now we're going to move to the UK.
Yeah.
And the picture isn't very different.
Yeah, the Pollution Solutions is the name of the publication that sent us this. Coal is becoming obsolete. For the first time, the UK renewable energy market has moved ahead of coal for the whole quarter. In the period of April to June, renewable energy was responsible for supplying 25% of the UK's energy needs. Meanwhile, coal, a traditional mainstay of the British electricity market, fell to just 17%. And I want to point something out here. Coal was ahead of renewables 1 year ago. 17%. What percentage of 25% is that? It's less than 3/4. They have fallen from being ahead to being 3/4 as big.
Okay.
In 1 year.
In 1 year.
And that's because their loss was renewables gain. Mm-hmm. This is not a good picture for the coal industry.
On, really,
yep.
you know.
Okay.
This would not have been at all possible 100 years ago.
Not even close. It wouldn't have been possible 10 years ago.
No, be barely possible.
Yeah.
And it wouldn't have been economic. And now it is.
Yeah, that's right. Okay. Our next item is from The Guardian.
Morocco.
Yeah. A complex of 4 linked solar mega plants, along with
big.
hydro and wind, will help provide nearly half of Morocco's electricity from renewables by 2020. When they are finished, the 4 plants, and I'm not even going to bother trying, it's Ouarzazate, I think it might be, but I'm not going to try to make that right,
No.
will generate 580 megawatts of electricity, enough to power 1 million homes. The first, Noor 1, has a generating capacity of 160 megawatts. Now,
These are solar thermal.
they're solar thermal. That picture on the left there shows parabolic mirrors aimed away from the sun. I think this must be, as the sun is rising, they're
rising
in their,
or setting, yeah.
They're in their evening position.
Yep,
I'll
yep.
bet that's what it is.
That's exactly what's going on.
But, you know, this
and
is...
on the right is their active position. That's aiming at that sun.
Yeah, at that big ball in the sky. That big ball in the sky, that is fusion power. That is nuclear. That is giving the Earth more energy than it can possibly use, and that is the nuclear power plant that we should be using.
But nobody owns the sun.
Oh dear. It's democratic.
Interesting picture on the right, if you can take a good look at it.
Yeah.
The mirror is parabolic, and
Yep.
you see something right in the middle. Looks like a glass pipe,
Right.
which is exactly what it is.
Yeah.
And it's getting
Hot.
heated up.
It's getting
very
hot. I wonder what's in that glass pipe. It's not going to be water.
It wouldn't be water.
No, if it were
some
water,
kind of molten salt.
Yeah, if it were water, it would blow up. They wouldn't be able to get the heat out of there fast enough.
Water would evaporate and blow up.
Yep.
Right.
It would boil inside the pipe. Not good.
Well, I guess it's time to mention my famous saying.
What's that?
There's a lot of very smart people in the world thinking on
Absolutely.
some very good ideas.
Tom
And some of them are going to hit it.
cannot get through one of these broadcasts without saying
that.
that
That's
once.
mandatory. That's mandatory.
Yeah.
That's my
Okay.
trademark saying.
We're up to Tuesday, October 27th.
And we're closer to home again.
Closer to home. Is this...
That's Kelly Ayotte.
Ayotte. I was saying, I don't know how to pronounce her last name.
Maybe it's Ayotte. I don't know.
It might be. Senator Kelly, I will use your pronunciation because...
That's what I hear in the news.
Yeah, it's probably right there. Senator Kelly Ayotte, Republican of New Hampshire, announced her support of the Clean Power Plan yesterday evening, making her the first Republican senator to support the landmark policy to curb carbon pollutions from power plants, protect multiple vulnerable communities, and galvanize America's transition to a clean energy economy. This is from E! News Park Forest. And that, I think, is a pretty impressive thing to do. You've got the top of her head off the screen.
Well, yeah, because I wanted to get the writing on the bottom
Oh,
of the
okay.
screen.
There,
Yeah, I
now
got- I
people
got-
can see
I
what
got
she looks
both
like.
of them. Huh?
Oh, okay. People can see what she looks like. Okay,
She does it. She really does have the top to her head.
she does. Yeah. Okay.
All righty, let's move along.
Okay.
Now we're in Florida.
Florida, hydrogen fuel news. The Florida Supreme Court approved a new ballot initiative that aims to expand the state's use of solar energy. The ballot is backed by Floridians for Solar Choice, a solar energy advocacy group. The group now has to get 683,149 petition signatures before February 1st, 2016 for the initiative to qualify for the November 2016 ballot. Now, are they going to do that? Absolutely, they're going to do
Well,
that.
it's interesting because Florida is a good solar state,
Great.
but they haven't used much of it, and it's political more than anything
It's
else.
political. It has to do with the fact that the utility says we don't want to do that, and the politicians are saying whatever the utility wants, the utility should get. So,
Sort of.
yeah. And of course,
Oh.
the utility is providing the politicians with campaign funds. So basically, what we've got here is legal bribery.
Yeah, that's what that whole.
You know what we're back to in this next one? Next thing coming up?
Yeah.
John
Hickenlooper.
John
Back to
Hickenlooper.
Hickenlooper.
Man, this guy just keeps showing up. Colorado Governor John Hickenlooper said he will seek the state Supreme Court's opinion on the legality of the Attorney General Cynthia Kaufman's lawsuit to stop implementation of the Clean Power Plan. Kaufman's office has joined 23 other states in filing the lawsuit against the EPA's plan to reduce carbon emissions. This is from the Denver Post.
I wonder if she's thinking about running for governor.
I don't know, but she's a Republican.
Yeah.
He's a Democrat.
Yeah.
And I don't know to what extent this might be a political ploy on her part to take the position. I doubt, honestly, that well, I would say that it certainly doesn't need to have her want to run for governor. She could.
But it's good publicity now for
It is.
operation
And,
later.
You know,
I mean, who knows who attorney general is in a state? Who's the attorney general of Vermont?
oh, I've forgotten his name. I've met him and I've forgotten
Have
his
you?
name. Yeah. There you
Sorrell,
go.
yeah,
William
Sorrell.
Sorrell.
Yeah.
Our audience has spoken. Good for you.
That's why we have an audience.
That's right, in order to keep us in line. Okay, so what he's doing is he's asking the Supreme Court, you know, it honestly, I have a feeling that this lawsuit is going to go before the U.S. Supreme Court, and
It probably will. There's 24
very,
states involved.
very fast.
Yeah, yeah.
And the Supreme Court might just say, this is legal
Yeah.
by a unanimous decision.
Think it'd be unanimous?
I
Wow.
think it's possible that it would be unanimous.
Well, I'll bet you one of those things that's coming up next. No, I won't. That's 100 reels.
Okay,
That's about $40.
100 reels.
Yeah. I don't know. Well,
This is
I'll bring them up.
This is Wednesday, October 28th. Okay.
I don't know who that guy is.
Well, neither does anybody else.
The Saudis do.
Maybe some of them do. Saudis, I don't know. When you have that much cloth and beard on your face, it's amazing that anybody can recognize it. Okay, this is from CNN. If oil stays around $50 a barrel, most Middle Eastern oil-producing countries will run out of cash in 5 years or less, warned a dire report from the International Monetary Fund this week.
That's the IMF.
That's the
Those are
IMF.
They're big guys.
Yeah, this is not a joke. That includes OPEC leader Saudi Arabia, as well as Oman and Bahrain. Low oil prices will wipe out an estimated $360 billion from the region this year alone. And you know, Tom, there was a graph with this thing.
Yeah, I don't have it on.
You don't have it?
Yeah.
Well, it showed the prices at which various countries
will break even.
would break even,
Yeah.
and it showed Saudi Arabia as just a little below $100 a barrel.
Yep, yep.
And I saw a similar set of statistics about a year ago, and all of the countries were similar to what they are in that graph, except Saudi Arabia, which a year ago was among the lowest producers. And my suspicion is that the person who produced that graph took the old figures that showed Saudi Arabia being low and then just kind of swapped in this this data that came. And the reason I bring this up is because you have to be extremely careful that all of your figures are generated the same way.
Yeah, if you're comparing apples, you don't want oranges
Right.
in there.
And I think that what those other figures are saying is that this is the price of oil at which the oil from various countries is making a profit for the country. And the one for Saudi Arabia, I kind of suspect, reading this, is that it was the figure at which Saudi Arabia would see its financial assets improve from the sale. In other words, they are spending more money than they're making because they're not making enough from the oil, even though the oil is profitable. You see? So I have a little bit of a suspicion about this. Nevertheless, if oil stays at $50 a barrel, these countries are going to be out of money in 5 years. We have low oil prices. They're artificially low in the United States, and the reason apparently is because the Saudis are producing oil very, very fast. And what this tells me is that sometime in the next 5 years, they're going to say, okay, we can't do this anymore. And then what happens?
You could very well be.
Then what happens?
I think that what they're doing is looking at the future. And they're saying 5 years from now, we're not going to even be able to sell this oil.
Yes, but the people who want the oil are, I think, going to have to spend a load of money to get it.
Eventually, yes.
And
yes.
So what I'm kind of expecting is that we're going to be seeing the price at the pump go $2, $2, $2, $2, $2.25, $6.
Yeah, something like that's going to happen.
Yeah.
I wouldn't argue the point.
And Tom and I are not advisors, but I would advise you to think about alternate forms of transportation. We don't have to be advisors to say that. Okay. So now we're up to the Financial Times.
This is the one that I had a really hard time finding.
Oh, did you?
A really hard time.
You know, I actually kind of fought through that myself. And I put it in there because I thought you could get to the text. But you got the picture.
I got the text too, but
Good
I
for you.
really had to go.
My golly.
It took me about an hour.
Oh my gosh. Tom, you were really working. You know, you talk about me doing the heavy lifting, but you were doing heavy lifting.
Well, I got frustrated. I said, I'm going to defeat this thing, you know.
Okay.
This is the one where I got the URL from somebody's blog. I mean, not a blog. What is it? Facebook.
Okay.
Somebody's Facebook.
Twitter.
It was Twitter. Yeah, it wasn't Facebook.
Okay.
It was Twitter.
This year, China will become the world's biggest installer of solar panels. But as companies increasingly struggle to secure the vast land banks they need for solar panels, they face greater needs to get around restrictions converting agricultural land.
We got them here in Vermont, too.
Yeah, we do. So they grow everything from plants to hairy crabs beneath the solar panels. And so in China, you can put up the solar panels, but you can't convert agricultural land to do it. It's got to stay agricultural. So what do? You put up the solar panels over agricultural land and keep it agricultural.
Well, that's not a bad idea, and it's happening here in Vermont.
It absolutely is.
Right here on Western Avenue, you got
absolutely.
goats.
Are you sure it's goats and not sheep?
The ones I saw were goats.
Goats.
It may
my
change.
gosh.
I don't know.
Oh my gosh, I wouldn't keep goats below solar panels. I'd worry that they'd eat the electric cables.
Well, they're neat. I've gone up there and talked to them.
The goats?
Yeah, they come over to the fence.
Do the goats talk to you?
No. Well, they might, but I'm not tuned into their frequency.
Yeah, right. My cat talks to me.
Yeah, my cat does too.
Yeah,
loudly.
Loudly. My cat says, "Me out. Let me out. Let me in." Food.
If I'm gone too long when I come home, the cat has a.
Yeah,
Where the hell you been? I've been worried sick.
Cats are so funny. Okay, so are we done with the Financial Times?
I think we are.
Okay,
Yeah.
we're wrapping up then with our last item of the day. Austin, Texas might become the most solar-powered city in America. This could actually take a few minutes to talk about. It approved an additional 162 megawatts of solar capacity, adding to 288 megawatts already in the works and 220 megawatts already installed, bringing the total to 670 megawatts.
That's a lot.
A lot of, my gosh. In case you wonder about costs, the 162 megawatts, a round of project, it has a set of contracts that were at $38 to $40 per megawatt hour, which translates into 3.8 to 4.0 cents per kilowatt hour.
Easier to understand for me.
My gosh, these guys are underbidding natural gas.
Yeah.
Does this tell you something about the future?
I think it does.
I've seen that. I think it may have been Austin, Texas, but it may have been. I forget. I think it may have been Austin. Bought some wind power at like 2 cents per kilowatt hour.
We talked about that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We've been hitting this.
I don't think it was Austin, but I do remember talking about it.
It was a city in Texas. But this is the first time I've seen solar power below 4 cents per kilowatt hour. That is even if you add into that the federal incentives, the 3.8 cents per kilowatt hour would still bring it only to 5.5 cents per kilowatt hour. And at 5.5 cents, it is
very competitive with gas.
Competitive with natural gas.
Yeah.
And of course, the price of natural gas, is that going to stay the same?
I don't think so.
I don't think so. Man.
I don't think so. We've talked about this down in the Binghamton, New York, Altoona, Pennsylvania area.
Right.
What's the name of that play?
That's the Marcellus
play.
Yeah.
People came in, bought the rights for 20 years. They've been there 5 years and they're not paying anymore.
Right.
They're running out of gas. The gas isn't
And
lasting as long as they expected.
Right. This is a problem with every gas field, is that the wells, the individual wells, run out much faster than expected. They very often lose 50% of their output every year. And, it doesn't take very long before you've lost.
It doesn't regenerate.
And it doesn't regenerate. And the only way they can keep these gas plays going is to drill an ever-increasing number of wells. So that's not working the way that people would like it to.
Well, we got about 4 minutes on the clock. I don't think we have time to bring up the slideshow.
Well, we should mention the slideshow.
Well,
we are doing a slideshow for anybody who slept through that portion of this show.
If you can write quickly, the URL is on the screen.
It's not there yet. You got to get me off and put it on.
Clicking it.
That's it. But you can go
That's
to
the long URL.
Yeah, go to geoharvey.wordpress.com, and that was October what? That was early on in the broadcast, wasn't it?
Yeah, third or fourth article, I think.
Third or fourth article? Yes, no. It's, I'm looking for it. Here it is, Monday, October 26th.
Okay.
It's an article from Business Insider India, and it has a slideshow of before and after shots relating to climate change. And it's also
posted. Worth looking at. There's nice pictures for one thing.
Yeah. Well,
but they're telling a story.
I was talking to Nancy Ray Mallory, who's the editor of Green Energy Times, and I had put this on a link to it on the Green Energy Times website.
Yeah, I found that.
And she, did you?
Well, looking for yeah, you came up, and I said, well, my God, it's the same link. It doesn't work for me.
And it didn't work at the Green Energy Times website?
No.
Because it worked for her. Maybe there's a time on this thing at which it fails.
Know.
Well, if it does,
there's these cookies. They know more about you than you know about yourself.
Well, at any rate,
have everybody.
Sweet dreams if it's evening, and have a pleasant day if it's any other time.
To all the world and makes the wind